Imagine you want to create an application in Power Apps to replace some manual paperwork process you have. But you don't have a database, and you don't have database experience. Well, that's where Common Data Services comes into play. And that's what this video is going to show you in a moment. So stay tuned. Welcome back. Common Data Services is an Azure database that sits out there. Azure at this time, it might change at a later time, but it's a database that sits out there for you that you're included in your P1 or P2 plan in Power Apps. So rather than have to go out and license another database, you already have one today if you have P1 or P2. So it's a premium connector, and that's why it is a P1 or P2. Now you're first of all going to see this when you go open up Power Apps and you go to Data. Now that's where you can see it inside of Power Apps. It also applies though to Flow and Power BI, as well as other things inside of the Power ecosystem. So how can we use this? Well, imagine you don't have the database knowledge to create your own database on-premise or in Azure. Well, this gives you a very easy interface to create that database, and chances are there are already entities out there that you want. So for example, if you want to connect to a customer entity, you probably already have that inside of the Common Data Services. So you can piggyback what Microsoft's already built for you. And if you have things like Dynamics, there's a lot more than even that also out there. So let's take a look at what this looks like. So first of all, I've logged into PowerApps.com. And inside of Power Apps, you'll see this Data tab on the left here. Once you expand that, you'll see things like entities, as well as option sets and data integration. So let's kind of work backwards here. Data integration is how you can load data on an automated way into those entities that we have up top here. So entities are your things that when I click on this, you'll see tons of them already out there. Things like addresses and accounts and contacts and all these things that are already available to you today. Now you'll also see custom ones that I've already created. So things like an order, for example, might be a custom one. But there's a slew of ones that are already available that have already been created for you that you have full rights to piggyback. And then you can also extend that. So for example, if I go into accounts here, for example, I can go through and add new fields to accounts. I can create relationships and business rules on those. So there's things inside of here that are much more difficult to do inside of an Azure database or an on-premise database. So for example, I want to create easy business rules. Let's say this field must be, the number must be between this and this. And if the number veers from that range, then show this kind of error message to the interface. Now that error message will be agnostic what the interface is. So it might be a Power App here, it might be a Dynamics over here. Either way, it's going to show us the same exact error message. So things like business rules, the forms of how data gets here, and dashboards, those are already kind of built for us. Now some of those require the P2 plan, which is a model-driven application, which we'll come back to a little bit later when we build these model-driven applications. But let's start with the Canvas application today, and how do we kind of add those fields with that. So let's go back to entities, and we're going to create a brand new entity here. We'll call this just, how about a laptop order? This is going to be a simple one right now. Spaces are allowed in the display names, and that's what's going to show to your application or to things like Power BI also potentially. This name right here you're seeing is actually the name inside the database itself. This is what your users are not going to see. But things like Power BI, this is how you're going to find that field inside of Power BI. It has this kind of this qualifier right here. Speaking of qualifiers, what's the uniqueness of this field? So I'll call this just order ID or something like that. This will really be the primary key of what represents a unique order ID in our case. We can also turn on attachments. We can add extra metadata inside of this, like descriptions and all those kind of things for things that get captured later. Let's go ahead and create this now. Now, you'll get an order ID. In a few moments, we'll get a green bar across this as it's actually creating this entity behind the scenes. This is creating right now what equates to a table. Now later on, Microsoft might change this behind the scenes. But right now, it's essentially an Azure database behind the scenes, and that might change at a later time. But this makes it agnostic to us as an end user. So what we can do next is we can go ahead and add our new fields. You'll see it's still provisioning behind the scenes, and sometimes it takes a little while to provision this, but we'll go ahead and keep on moving on regardless of that. So let's go ahead and add a new field, and let's call this device name. So what kind of device does the user want? That's fine, we'll keep that one a text. Now notice when I click the drop-down box here, we get a whole slew of new things that are available to us. So things like, do we want to have a phone number here? And there's some automated rules around those kind of things. Is it a valid phone number? Is it a valid email address? Those kind of things are all going to be inside that. It knows about those kind of entities. You also have things like customers, where it can do lookups on, and you do have full access to lookups as well. So CDS gives us a lot of power here. We're only going to do the 101 level today, but just note it gives us a lot more power than what we're going to show today. So there's a device name. Let's also give it a requester. This will be an email address of some sort. Let's go with email address here. There it is. That'll be required in this case also. By me checking required, it's going to recognize that inside of Power Apps and do additional things there as well. I'm going to go ahead and save this entity for a few seconds here and let it provision that out. Now, it takes a few minutes to save this in some cases. While that's doing its thing, though, let me show you some other benefits of CDS as well, Common Data Services. One of the things is inside the Flow entity, we have full access. This little icon up here, that's a CDS icon. Hey, when a record is created, I want you to do this. Hey, when a record is selected, I want you to do this. So it gives you a lot more interfaces into it and a lot more ability to create additional stuff inside this. It's still saving this entity now. As you can imagine, this takes, it's actually creating some tables behind the scenes, and that provisioning we saw before that hadn't finished is now costing us costing us a little dearly right now. So what we're going to do with this entity is we're going to go through and we're going to create some additional rules on top of this. So let me show you how we can create those rules also. So I'm going to go back over to Power Apps, and inside of entities, let me just kind of clone this tab here. Here, let me just go back over to here, and let's show you what one looks like here. All right, so we're going to go ahead and create a new. We'll kind of open up an existing one here. I'm going to move this a little closer so we can kind of see it out there. And we're going to see an existing one already created. So what we're going to go into, we'll go to Data and Entities, and we'll see what additional things we can do inside this. So I've got one already created here called Device Order. So almost the same kind of concept we were going before. And I am in the wrong environment. Make sure you had the right environment selected. So I'll go to my webinar environment here. Again, I'll go back to Entities, and we'll see our device one. So you get a CDS database per environment, as you see in there. There's my device order right here. Now, here's what it looks like complete. So we've created a whole bunch of entities already out here, and you're seeing those right here. We have multi-line text for comments. We have two options here for capital approved. The two options are like Booleans, yes, no kind of things. And you do have full control over it, right? You can see right here. But in my case, this yes, no, I'm defaulting to the yes in my case. We also have ones that are calculated fields. So we're seeing here in this contribution right here, you have a base object and then you have another object. So that's because you can have multiple currencies here. And so it's assuming that you want to have a multi-currency kind of thing. And you'll see this calculation right here. If I open up the calculation, it's going to go ahead and open up a new interface. And this calculation is going to give me the option to go through and base one field on another field. So this is where you can go through and say, I want my department to go ahead and contribute a certain amount of money towards this PC that the customer wants also. So once that does come up, you will see that it's a really simple formula way to do that. Let's see how our other options come in there. Okay, so it finally did save behind the scenes here. And let's see if it actually is. The calculation's up yet? It is not up yet for some reason. The environment's acting a little bit squirrely today. Let's go ahead and close this, hit done, and let's show you how to create a calculation through the other interface here also. So let me go ahead and create a new field here. We'll call this one price, and we'll make that a currency. So as you can see, sometimes it does make it interesting. It's sometimes a little bit sluggish on the save. The actual records are not very sluggish, but actually creating the entities and all that can take a little time to actually build these interfaces because it's doing a lot behind the scenes here for us. So let's go ahead and create one more field here. This will be our calculation. So I'll call this contribution. And this will be a currency also. Okay. And we'll make this a new calculation here. Now, when we do this, it's going to require we save this. No big deal here. It's going to require we save it. And once we save it, we'll be able to come back. There it goes. Okay. And then open it up. It thinks it opened it up, but it did not. So let's go ahead and hit done. and then now we'll see those two fields that you saw before. So that's what we're trying to open up back here. Let's see if it actually opened up yet. It must have closed it down for me here. That's okay. Let's go ahead and open up one of these guys here, and there is our open calculation right here. Okay. So for some reason it keeps on shutting us down on me, but there we go. Now we can say, all right, there's any kind of if-then condition? No, in our case, we just want to make sure that the employee is contributing 50%. So I'll search for the price. There it is. And we want to multiply that times 50% and hit OK. And now we'll see the contribution is the employee is going to go ahead and add in 50% into that. So it'll be able to split the price with the employee in this case. So that's how we create calculations, and there's a whole lot here. This is a 101 session. It's long enough as it is, but I just want to show you how the basics of creating a CDS entity. Now that we've created that, we can go ahead and publish this entity out. And a few more things you can see in here. You have data here. This is where we can go ahead and see what records are already here. So you notice we're not seeing any in this case, but let's go over to our other entity we already have open and go to data here. So you're seeing I have 4 or 5 records in the entity in this case with the pricing and all those kind of things. You also have access to things like charting and dashboards. We can create filters. Now this will come into play later when we create a model-driven application. We also have forms and views. Again, this will come into play with a model-driven application later also. It allows us to create those applications very precisely and very, very easily because of that. And lastly, you have business rules. So things like, in my case, I have this other entity I already created called device, and I'm going to calculate the shipping date based on some kind of rules. So these are things you can easily kind of build into this without having to go through and build that manually. Now, some of the things are kind of a little unusual you'll find, like this right here for creating business rules. Some of these will open up the old Dynamics interface instead of the new modern interface. So in those kind of instances like we're seeing right here, we'll see it actually open up that old interface. That's completely fine. Just save it. They're working to modernize those, and we'll go ahead and close this down right now because it's taking its sweet time right now. Now, let's see how do you go ahead and integrate this now into our application. So I have this application that you're seeing right here, and this is just a PC ordering application. When I go over to here, I want to be able to order whatever one is selected at that point. So to do that, let's go ahead and go to View and Data Sources. Let's create our new data source, and we'll search for Common Data Services. Oh, it's right in front of my face here. There we go. Just like SQL Server or Azure, it's going to give us a list of all the entities that are out there, and we'll find somewhere in here is our device one that we've already created. Okay, device orders. There we go. This is the one that we created a little earlier that you did not see, but it's a complete version of the one we kind of started poking around at. So now we'll hit the Create button, and it's going to go ahead and create that entity that we can connect to. Now we can create forms and galleries and all those kind of things on this without actually having that database, having to worry about the database. So to do the order, let's just go ahead and create a quick form. We'll make this an edit form. All right, kind of moving on the side here. And we'll go ahead and point to our data source of device orders. There we go. It's going to kind of try to pick what we want here. We don't need attachments and those kind of things. So I'm going to go to Edit Fields here and kind of remove some of these fields that are kind of a little bit unneeded here. So like for example, attachments, we may want to have a receipt or some of those kind of things. Approval status, I'm going to remove that. That's going to be set later in our model-driven application, so you'll see that a little bit later. Things like approval date, don't need that either. We don't need the, I'll keep the approver in here. I'll keep the capital approve, remove that. And comments I'm going to keep, we'll make those multi-line. Okay, so we'll come back to this guy in a moment here. We'll make that a multi-line one. Device name we'll keep, and the price we'll keep. And also, let's add one more, and that's going to be the requested date here. So somewhere in here, I have a date. There we go, request date, and I'll go ahead and add that as well. So there we go. All right, and I think I have device. I don't have device. I'm going to add that one as well. We need to know the device that they're selecting. All right, so we'll go ahead and I think I actually called it name. There we go. Oh, nope, I did not create a name. It's somewhere in my list here is my device name. Okay, and I'm looking right at it probably. But we'll keep on going here just to kind of keep me sane here at this point. Okay, that is going to bug the heck out of me unless I've already added it and I'm looking right at it. I have added it. Like, how about that? All right, I'm going to move that up top here. All right, that is one of those days, I guess, huh? All right, so things like our comments, we may want to go ahead and make that edit text. We maybe have a multi-line text, so that way the customer can kind of add their own comments to it. Let me go ahead and close this down, and we'll go ahead and add some more stuff as time goes on. I also have too many columns here. Let's make this a single column kind of form so we can kind of see everything on one piece. And there's some additional things you want to do. Like, for example, I'll keep this really simple here. We want to go ahead and say whatever you selected on the left here is going to go on the right. So let's go ahead and unlock this field so we can mess with it. There we go. And then we'll say, hey, whatever you selected, we call that gallery over there. We called this guy, okay, compare screen. Oh, there we go. We called this gallery compare list gallery. All right, so there we go. So we'll call this compare list gallery dot selected dot device name. There we go. So whatever you selected on the right will show up on the left. Same thing with the approval. Let's go ahead. The approver is going to be always me for the time being, just so we can kind of keep this going. Now, in reality, you may look up the Office 365 manager and then actually put their manager in place there also. But we'll keep this really simple, and I will approve all laptops at this company. Okay, so default. Okay. There we go. Now we don't have the requester in here, so we might get some errors. Price, same thing here also. The price has already been calculated. We already know the price on that right side. So again, I'll go and grab that compare list gallery dot selected dot price. There we go. Okay, now because the price, they can't overwrite the price, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that this is one of those things I don't want them to actually edit. So we can go over here and go in the mode of this form. There we go. Now this one item in the form. And we can actually go through and actually disable, not mode, excuse me, but the actual area here and actually make sure they cannot edit it. There's lots of things we can do to kind of add a little more pizzazz to it, but we'll keep it pretty simple right now and just assume that we'll just be able to edit anything inside this. Now we just need a button. So let's go ahead and add our button inside this and make sure we can send this up to the data. So I'll go ahead and just say send request. And my hunch is I'm actually this is going to fail at first because I had the approver but not the requester. Let me go ahead and actually add that just to keep things less worrisome here. So let me go back to properties here, and I will add one more field here. I think I need the requester. I think that's going to be the required one as well. Requested by. There we go. And I'm going to make the requested by always say my email address too, just to keep things going here. Of course, in a real application, we'll keep it actually simple. We'll just do user.email. This is whatever user signed in and their email address. So there we go. And let's send that request in now. So for the request, really simple, like any other form, we're going to go ahead and submit that form in. And it's form 1. Oops. AutoSense is nice, but it also occasionally messes me up. There we go. So in this case, you'll notice we're right now in edit mode of this form. You may want to double check that. Let's make sure we are always going to stay in the edit mode. We are in edit mode. And whenever somebody hits this form, we may want to make sure that we actually, first of all, say, whenever they hit the form, that we always reset the form back to the new. So we want to make that mode to a new mode. So let's see how we did here. Let's go ahead and run this application. You'll see the problem right there, right? That's what I just mentioned here. That's what I was worried about. So let's go ahead and on this form, let's make sure that whenever somebody hits this compare screen, that we're always looking at a new form here. So let's go ahead and go to actions. And whenever this page first comes up, we're going to say form1.new. Oops. Form1. Okay. Mode.new. Let's see how we did. So I'm going to go back, hit compare. We are now looking like we got some, let me go back, hit compare, and select our item. Oh, and I see our problem. All right, it's one of those days today, I guess. So let's go back over to this guy here. Go to Action and on Visible of this form. It's not going to be that. It's going to be New Form and then Form 1. One of those days today. It is a Monday after all, so that could be part of my problem here. All right, now if we go back, we're going to have to go back to the previous screen so it triggers that event. And now we have a new form. So just a mental note, that other one was more of an enum. This is just more of an action I wanted to happen. So I'll go ahead and submit that. Now what's not going to happen right now is I have not gone through and once I save the form here, I haven't gone through and actually say go back after this is done. So once this goes from gray to blue, the form is submitted now. So this was an Aspire M. So if I go back over to our data, okay, let's see here. This is our entity right here, and I go over to data. We should see now our Acer. There, our Acer M with hazard created on just a few moments ago, and it's an active one right now. So this is how we actually can, just like any other database, we can tie into a CDS database like any other database out there. Really simple application to do. And in future ones, we'll build a model-driven application. Now, just to show you a quick example of what a model-driven application on the same entity looks like, I've created one here that kind of shows you what it would look like. So in this case, it's going to feel a lot like Dynamics in this case, because it is Dynamics. So we're seeing a list of all the orders that have come in. Here's our Aspire U right here. It's above $1,000. So one of the nice things about this is we have this whole process workflow. And we'll work on in a future video around building this process workflow. I can say, all right, it's been approved. I'm going to approve it now, hit next stage, and it keeps on going from stage to stage. So it's a very obvious way for the approval process to make sure that he will follow a very distinct process. So Common Data Services, again, gives us the ability to create a database without database skills. Now you might have database skills. Even if you have database skills, it gives you additional features. So things like, hey, when this record is viewed right now, well, how do you want to react to that? So it has full audit ability. It also has the ability to integrate things like flow. So when this record is actually submitted, I want to kick off this workflow right here to do step A, B, and C. All that could be done in here, and you have workflow right here. We'll actually cover this workflow a bit more in our future video here as well. So hope you enjoyed this video. This is our basics of how to create a CDS entity and then deploy it, and then also how do we actually use that inside of our application. So again, just to reinforce this one last time, after you do create that entity, make sure you do hit the save button, and then you can also create solutions where you kind of package it up and then deploy it to environments also. So we'll show that in a future video as well. Thanks so much for joining me today. Have a great day. Bye.